Welcome to another edition of The Naked Truth. My name is Ramon Roan.
My name is John Singletary.
And today's topic we're talking about is, why don't more blacks get married?
I wish they would.
Yeah.
I do some photography work, weddings, and it's nice to see when young couples come together, they get married, and then I see them years later and they've got 2 or 3 children,
Right.
happy family.
Happy family, right.
See them in church. I mean, there's nothing better than seeing
Nothing,
that.
I agree. Yeah. However, it is a complex issue on this.
Sure it is, because there's so many things that can prevent us from joining in marriage.
Right, it is.
Economics, for one.
Sure enough.
Oftentimes, from a socioeconomic standpoint, we have to have a certain amount of money that we earn to not only take care of ourselves, but to sustain a family. It's not right to go into a marriage if you can't afford to pay the light bill, to pay the water bill. Why would a lady want to marry a young man who can't take care of her basic needs? And then you don't get married simply to trudge along only for the basics. You want to do more than that.
You want to do more.
As some of the women say, I can do bad all by myself.
Right.
And so, oftentimes, the employment situation has a major bearing on why a young man decides not to ask a young lady to get married, why he decides to remain single. And whether it's employment from going out and being employed by someone, or that the self-employed business is not doing well. And oftentimes it comes back to, on that side, contracts. Contracts in America is a staple part of paying the daily expenses for hundreds of thousands of businesses. It's unfortunate that as African Americans, non-whites, we oftentimes are denied access. Then even when we're getting access, we're denied contracts that we've even won. And so that's a major part when you chain link that back to whether or not a young man feels comfortable in getting married. I remember my father had a contract that was awarded to him and a partner, and after they announced the contract, found out it was them, who were the only 2 African Americans there, and the only one that put in a bid, and this is in South Carolina, dealing with procurement. They then announced that they made a mistake and changed the contract. I had a contract I just recently applied for after having it for several terms, and when the economy went down, applied for the contract, I won the bid. I still have the paperwork where I won the bid, and they ended up changing it. Now, I've contacted the Department of Justice, Department of Education, who it falls under, and they seem to continually ignore the fact that this type of thing happens. But the contract was awarded to someone else, even though, based on the evaluator's criteria, I had won the contract. Those are the kinds of things. Now, that was jobs not only from a job, income not only for me, but we employed 7, 8 other people. And so, those types of things that happen affect down the line whether or not sometimes people get married, whether or not they have additional money to put into our black churches, into our community, employing other people, and we have to address it.
Well, the article that dealt with about why they're not being married, and you're bringing up a key point, is that if there are more black firms that had those access to those contracts, that won those contracts, 60% of a black firm, it hires, 60% of those firms have African Americans. they're staffed by African Americans. They're not all African Americans. Some businesses, all they have is African Americans. But 60% of them, on average, 60% is African Americans. So African American businesses are the largest employers of African Americans. This here would lower the unemployment rate, give job opportunities and business opportunities to those who didn't have it before. This here will in turn, instead of seeing there's less marriages, there will be more marriages, because like what John said, now I can not just get by, I can go ahead and buy a house, I can go ahead and send my kids to college, I can go ahead and pay my child support if that's the situation you're in. But it really has a lot to do with the black economy on why African Americans, men and women, that are not getting married.
And there's a multiplier effect. If I get a contract, and it's a large enough contract, say for instance I did construction work,
right,
and I got a contract through DOT, then some of the subcontracts will go then to white as well as non-white or African American businesses to do the subcontract work, and on and on. That's and so oftentimes one major contract ends up employing several other businesses that may be African American.
And those businesses, they can spin off, John, because if they got this contract and they do good on this, they can get a contract that's not a government contract, but it could be just a private, contract, and that can just grow their business. But all this has an effect on why African American men and women that are not getting married. And we're having less marriages, but we're still having more baby showers. We have more baby showers than we got marriages. And we need to have the family in the African American community is being seriously affected by this. Because when men are not marrying the women that have their children, those children, they go lacking. I understand that, well, I'm always a part of my baby mama's life or my child's life, but there's no substitute. You need to be in that home, and that child needs to see the interaction with the mother and the father. They need to see that interaction. You don't give them that interaction. They just see that daddy comes by every 2 weeks.
Right. And most recently I had a situation where I was talking with a young man, and he was trying to wait to see whether or not his contract was renewed, and he was employed by a school system, and it was difficult for him to go ahead and get married even though he wanted to. And the young lady, they'd been dating for a while and they decided to get married, but he wanted to make sure that his contract was renewed so that he would then at least be comfortable enough to say, well, I can take care of the staple bills that we have coming in. Unfortunately, the contract was not renewed, and they didn't get married. That's sad. That's every day. That's sad simply because we should be in a position by now, with the intelligence that we have and the time that we put into civil rights, we should be at the position that at least we're getting fairness when it comes to contracts, and we're not. Over $800 billion in goods and services contracts in the United States given out by the federal government every year, and we don't even get a smidgen of those contracts. That's not only sad and unfair,
it should be
criminal. But it should be criminal. It's illegal.
Yeah, it should be.
Because here it is, we pay proportionally our taxes like everybody else does, but we are denied access to the benefits of government contracts. And those are issues that the Judicial Freedom Riders will address. We said earlier that we have a push for 1 million members over the next year, and these are the kinds of issues that we will address radically but legally in order to ensure that our African American businesses receives their fair share, which means that we also will try and see that white businesses receive their fair share, and only their fair share. No more, no less.
And just to close on that, John, is that we encourage them to get married. Even if that young man got married, even if he didn't get a contract, they would be better off. Statistics shows that when a married couple are less likely to be in poverty than a single couple, than a single person, a single woman.
Right, but I would get the job first.
I understand.
I would get a job first, then get married.
Yeah.
And if you lose the job after you get married, of course, you look for another one.
Right.
And then you're one, so she can overshadow or step in, and her job may sustain you until you find one.
Right. But I'm saying that you're less, you
Yeah.
know, statistically, I understand what you're saying, but statistically shows that married couples are less likely to be in poverty than a single parent.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, it is a chance, no doubt there's a chance, and we always, because as men, we want to take care of our family. There's support, and
And we should have the freedom and the right to do that. If it were my daughter, I would, and a young man didn't have a job, I would tell him, no, don't marry him.
You know, get
I'm not
job.
making a criticism about him as a person.
Right.
I'm just saying that his thought process should say, I need to be able to take care of me and her.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And so she would need to wait.
Mm-hmm.
Even if she were working,
Mm-hmm.
then you save your money, and then when y'all get married,
Right.
then hey, you can use it as a down payment on a house, which
Right.
then helps him out, so now the payment's lower, but you know, whatever it is you're going to do,
Right.
help him to feel like a man by at least waiting until he gets a job.